Welcome to Telewizja Republika. Another day, another Russian attack against Ukraine. That's how those attacks look like. According to Kyiv independent reports, this attack resulted in the death of 4 individuals and injures to over 30 people. The Russian offensive, involved 59 missiles and drones targeting various regions overnight and into the morning. Ukraine's Air Force indicated that their air defenses successfully intercepted 18 cruise missiles of different type. The Russian military employed a diverse array of weaponry in this operation, including air-launched missiles, ballistic missiles, and anti-aircraft guided missiles. However, not all the launched missiles achieved their intended targets. As reported by the Ukrainian military, this attack resulted in casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure in Zaporizhzhia, Khmelnytskyi, Dnipro, and Kharkiv oblasts. In Kharkiv, the Russian strikes caused significant damage to a local enterprise and educational institutions. In Kharkiv, a residential property in the city of Zmiv was hit. Khmelnytskyi Oblast in western Ukraine also experienced the brunt of the attack. At least 6 explosions were reported. The local air defenses managed to down 2 missiles. However, some missiles, as predicted, succeeded in striking infrastructure facilities. As of today morning, 2 fatalities were confirmed in Khmelnytskyi Oblast. Dnipro Oblast was another target of the Russian offensive, the missile attack. The Russian strikes in Kryvyi Rih and Novomoskovsk led to the death of 1 woman and injuries of 31 others, including 4 children. The attacks caused extensive damage in the region, affecting a shopping mall, over 20 houses, administrative buildings, gas stations, a 5-story building, and a vehicle. This is the map of those attacks. The city of Zaporizhzhia was hit by 5 missiles. These missiles struck a residential area, resulting in at least 5 wounded individuals as of today morning. As you know, those attacks were expected for a long time. Our friend Joe Lindsley was warning us for a long time that this time will come. And now, with the new year coming, we got another massive hit to the Ukraine. Here is our Substack, rhetoric.com. This is the website that we can be in touch through, so you can leave us your email so that we can find you and let you know about all the latest developments from the front lines of the war against the West that we are reporting on my program. And that's what we are going to talk about on my show. My name is Michał Rachon. This is Rhetoric On. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
And here to talk with us about this missile attack, second in this year, second biggest attack for a very long time, is one and only Joe Lindsley, a man who spent last 3 years in Ukraine witnessing all the atrocities of this war and reporting and fundraising money for the people who are fighting this war against Russian oppression. Joe Lindsley, welcome back. Great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to be talking with you again, especially in these very difficult times. It's been pretty exhausting holidays here. And, from this morning, actually, when I went to bed at about 1 o'clock this morning, we had good indications that by 6 o'clock in the morning, the Russians would be sending missiles throughout Ukraine. I didn't even set my alarm clock. I knew that the air raid alarm would wake me up. It sure did at 6 o'clock. And we had what I call this dance macabre of Russian missiles, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and those hypersonic Kinzhal missiles, which are very hard to stop, swirling all over the country. And just imagine, like, you're sitting here in Lviv and it says missiles coming to Lviv. They could hit in 2 or 3 minutes. And then the last second, they change course. And so not only do these missiles cause damage when they make impact, but they create a sense of terror throughout the country. And so this is an example of what Russia has been unleashing upon Ukraine. But really, this phase began last Tuesday, January 2nd. And, we've spoken, how throughout the entire fall, there were no major Russian missile attacks, nationwide attacks on Ukraine. That was coincident with the great Ukrainian efforts to really break up a lot of the Russian Black Sea Fleet and really to limit Russia's ability to attack. And Ukraine and the West and all of Ukraine's alleged friends had all fall to prepare. And here we are. Now these attacks have arrived. It's extremely cold. Today, in Lviv, it's a high of 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And so perhaps that's one reason why the Russians wanted to attack today. But the good news is...
Joe, I wanted to focus for a second on what you just said. I mean, you warned our viewers. We talked while the TVP world was still on air, and you predicted that there will be a day when this massive attack comes back, the massive attack is going to happen. Because for a very long time, we did not witness that scale missile attacks against Ukraine. And as we read in the intelligence reports that were published after the first of those 2 waves of attacks, the British military intelligence estimated that this draft of missile attacks from the Russian perspective was caused by the lack of weapons that they could use, and that for those months they were producing missiles and other weapon systems that were actually used in this today attack and those attacks that we saw in the first days of January. So what do people say in Ukraine about this long months of lack of missile attacks of that scale?
Well, Michal, there's a growing awareness that especially the White House and Washington, for all of the rhetoric and the Ukrainian flag waving, that they're not serious about victory. And during that time, during those past months, North Korea, it seems, according to the reports, provided Russia with missiles with a range possibly of 900 kilometers, and the United States refuses to even give missiles with a range of 300 kilometers to Ukraine. So North Korea gave Russia long-range weapons, or they made a deal, and Ukraine is struggling. They got, I think, 17 of those in October from the U.S., and then nothing since then. And I think it's really telling the statements from the White House into the mindset of Washington right now. John Kirby, the White House's national security spokesman, I saw him quoted in the BBC the other day after those January 2nd attacks, which, by the way, were horrific. I mean, actually, days before January 2nd, it was like December 29th, Russians sent 23 missiles to Kharkiv. 23. I've been there when there's been 6 missiles, and that's terrifying. And 23. It was the first time I heard fear in the voices of people in Kharkiv. They were so shaken. And here's how the White House responded to those. It was really 5 days in a row up to January 2nd with more than 500 missiles. And John Kirby said this: "The most effective response to Russia's horrific violence against the Ukrainian people is to continue to provide Ukraine with vital air defense capabilities and other types of military equipment." And if you think about what that really means, it means, okay, they'll keep giving Ukraine ability to counteract attacks like January 2nd and today. And if you really think about that, okay, Russia will just keep making these attacks probably every week, as they did last year. And Ukraine will continue to use the air defense until it is depleted. And how does that advance this? We're back exactly where we were 1 year ago.
Do I understand that what you mean is that Russia will still produce new missiles and send them and fire them on Ukrainian cities, and Ukraine will get more anti-missiles from US, and nothing will change on the front line, basically, because this is a.
Well, yeah, in two ways. So nothing will change on the front line because the guys at the front don't have, for example, the sort of medium to long range missiles like the ATACMS, where they can hit Russian positions. Also, they won't have the F-16s, which we can talk about in a minute. So they won't have air cover. But then on top of that, Ukrainians, they can only act defensively. They won't have the ability to hit the bases from which Russia launches these missiles. You know, they need long-range weapons to attack those bases in Russia. And as we see on, I think it was December 30th, Ukrainians had a small incursion, it seems, into Belgorod, just over the border in Russia from Kharkiv. And that was, you know, very rarely do Ukrainians hit anything on Russian soil. But they have to, with the limited resources they have, to stop this. And the day they did that, the United Nations condemned Ukraine. The Assistant Secretary General condemns Ukraine for hitting Belgorod, the place from which the Russians are all frequently attacking Kharkiv. And so if you look carefully, not even carefully, if you just listen to what the White House is saying, they're only about defense. They're not talking about victory. And I think this is extremely clear now to everyone here. And Shalanda Young, the director of the White House of Office of Management and Budget, you know, said if the Republicans don't vote for the spending package for Ukraine, it's going to be very dire for Ukraine. But the fact is, most of that $60 or so billion is for things that nothing to do with making victory happen. And so the real question is, if you want to save money, give Ukraine the tools needed to put a stop to this, or this winter, next winter, the winter thereafter, the United States will still be trying to fund the Ukrainian government without actually funding the destruction of the Russian military.
So we got a situation that we actually talked about for 2 years. We are getting to the third year in less than 2 months. Basically, February 24th is the date of the new phase of Russian war against Ukraine. Based on what we read in the intelligence reports published by the Western media, the Russians tried to hit the military industry facilities in Ukraine. On the other hand, when we read the reports of the Ukrainian media, lots of regular households and civilian targets were hit. So what's the reality? How does it look like in reality from your perspective? Were the military industry targets hit by Russia or the civilian infrastructure, or both?
Well, you know, back into right before the counteroffensive, there was some indication that the Russians were hitting Ukrainian military infrastructure. And, you know, the Ukrainians are smart and they adapt and they have to protect it. You know, for the past several months, there's been significant activity of Russians using these Iranian drones. And I felt like, you know, it's like the eye of Sauron looking for its targets. And they were preparing for what they've done this past week and a half. They were looking for these targets. But, you know, they launch a variety of missiles. The Kinzhal supersonic missiles are precise. They can hit exactly what they're looking for. The other missiles are less precise. And so I think it's the same story we've seen since the beginning. The Russian method of operation is a combination of precise targets, terroristic targets to scare people, break people's spirits. And the whole point is to break this country and also to break the will of the West. I'll say in the past week and a half, like on January 2nd, it was the most number of hypersonic Kinzhal missiles that Russia has ever launched. I can't underscore how terrifying that day was for everyone in this country. I can still hear the echoes of the missiles I heard around me here in Lviv. Kyiv was terrorized that day and then several days later. But the Patriot missile system from the U.S. worked. You know, it stopped those Kinzhal missiles from hitting their target. And so either the Russians are trying to find a weakness in the system and to poke holes in it, or they're just trying to deplete Ukrainians' air defense and to break the spirits of the West. And so in all of this, we have to push the question to Washington. Are we just going to let this go on and on and on, or is someone going to say we need to put a stop to it? Ukrainians have shown when they got the Storm Shadow missiles from the UK, they can use them incredibly well. They've been able to hit places in Crimea. By the way, Ukrainians, there was a lot of fireworks in Sevastopol and other places in Crimea over the weekend. So the Ukrainians are steadily doing that work sort of behind the scenes. But without the right tools, this is just going to continue until all of this. I'll say I've never seen the spirit so heavy. No one wants to give up.
This is the question I wanted to ask you, because all of our viewers, people who follow our conversations that last for that long time, you always emphasize, you always pointed to the high spirit of the people in Ukraine, and that they kind of used to those massive missile air attacks. Do you think that this last phase changed something in terms of the spirit and of the attitude? Are people terrorized by the last attack more than they were in the earlier phases of the war?
Well, I would say people are tired. I mean, if you look at the city of Kharkiv, where I spent so much time the past year, that city the past 6 to 8 months was coming back to life. And in some places you couldn't even see the war. They were rebuilding, and stores and cafes were reopening. And now, after this week and a half of attacks, it looks like it did in March of 2022. So much of that progress is erased, even down to like the regular coffee shop I went to is now gone. That's a common experience for many people throughout the city. There's more fatalities than there have been in recent times. And it's such a heaviness because so much has been invested in this. People have given, they've given their lives, their loved ones have died, people have stood strong, and so much money has been spent, and so much people, the politicians around the world have, said they support Ukraine, and then we see what happens if you're not decisive, if you don't have courage, it all becomes sort of a waste. And what is a big concern here? We got this news. It seems Denmark was going to send F-16s. To Ukraine. Tiny little Denmark, but they agreed to do it. They had to get the permission of the United States to do it, of course. And we thought that they might be here in March. Ukrainians have been training to fly these in the U.S. and in other places. And now we're getting indications that those F-16s could be delayed by many, many more months. I mean, so we're talking into late 2024.
Why? What's the answer? Because this is not a decision that can be that is hard to make in terms of politics. If this kind of stop comes, the stop has the political background. So what's the reason for this? Those Falcons are not to be delivered anytime soon.
That is the key. That is the key question, Michał. And I think in August, the Danish Prime Minister said by the end of 2023. Those F-16s would be here. Really, they should have been here before the counteroffensive. And the question that anyone who's got the ability to ask this, so anyone in the White House press corps, I wish people would start asking these questions. But, why does this keep getting kicked down the road? And one suspicion I have, is that the UN, when I talk with people in the Pentagon, people who used to work in the Pentagon, I get the straight scoop from them. They don't want F-16s in Ukraine as it stands now.
Why?
And they only want to, because they don't want to lose them, and they're nervous and scared of Russia, and so they want to wait until there's some kind of partition, where there's some kind of deal and negotiation.
So this is basically the thing that we are warning against for a very long time. That the political decision is made. We are just waiting for the circumstances to be the circumstances to make it possible to announce that the deal was done. That we are having a partition of Ukraine. That Russia stands on the ground of Crimea that belongs to Russia officially, even if not legally, that Luhansk and Donetsk, basically what Russia grabbed and what's stolen, is going to be effective Russian territory, and the whole world is going to accept it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is scary and awful, but it's pretty clear. Both, not only Russia, but also Washington, is waiting for the spirits of the Ukrainian people to break. Washington wants that too, because they don't want to have to deal with this. Just in the way that you got to remember those first days and weeks of the full-scale invasion, Washington was quiet. They weren't rushing to help. You know, they waited until the Ukrainians proved that they weren't going to quit. And Ukrainians became a problem for the world until the politicians said, "Oh, we can use Ukraine," as they did. You know, Ukraine became such a big topic that people in Washington and Brussels could hide their other problems and just wave the Ukrainian colors. And that's what they did.
Yeah, but from the political standpoint, the Ukraine itself became a political problem in U.S., not only in U.S., in various countries. We had the Ukrainian issue being a political subject, very often streamlined in a way by the Russian propaganda. It's not only U.S. This kind of things are happening also in Europe. Those kind of things are happening also in my home country, in Poland. Not speaking of Germany, not speaking of the states ruled by the politicians who just dream about calling Vladimir Putin before he ends his gym session or ice hockey session.
Well, and this is where I think, you know, where Ukraine can actually be a mechanism to fix a lot of our broken politics, because so much is at stake now, not just for Ukrainians, but for the whole world. I mean, if you look at a map of Ukraine in proportion to the rest of Europe, Ukraine is the largest country in Europe. And so today, a huge portion of Europe was under missile threat. And if Russians controlled this, they could send missiles from Western Ukraine or even central Ukraine and threaten France. I mean, it's really realistic. And so this affects the whole world. But we also see that there's a brokenness in the politics in Washington, and we see it very clearly through the prism of Ukraine. Washington claims that they fix problems by throwing money at it. This is what Washington has always done. And those Americans who are sort of skeptical of Ukraine, it's because they're skeptical of the way Washington works. And they believed, ironically, they believed Joe Biden and the White House when they said they support Ukraine. But if you look a little bit closer, they don't. They support a long war, they support the defense industry, and they support the usual Washington games where you never have to have courage, you throw money at something, and you hope it kind of gets fixed while you're in office.
And then you throw more money.
Die.
Joe,
by the way, and while your defense secretary disappears for 5 days or whatever, 3 days.
Yeah, that was weird in a way, but this is what the media reported a couple of days ago. Joe, before we go, I would like you to give us a brief report on the fundraising that we are doing. What is the outcome? What is the level of people's support after those information about the missile attacks? What are you after in terms of the things that you and our viewers are funding to the people fighting Russian aggression against Ukraine?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because we need good news, and this is a bright spot. And Michal, the viewers of your program in December really rallied at the end of the year, and so now we're in the process of buying and outfitting a bunch of drones, in particular, to get to different units of people we know well in different parts of the front line. And what's great about this is, we can sort of experiment and see which drones are most effective. Those who gave money through the nonprofit foundation, those drones are only used to help with evacuations, with medical evacuations and risk assessment, but very, very helpful. Those are very expensive drones. And then those who gave money privately via PayPal, with that, we can buy many, many of these tiny FPV drones, which all you got to do is put some little devices on there. And, by the way, when Ukrainians talk today about the Russian missiles coming in, they say, Russia is giving us more of its culture today, but these little tiny drones can push back against Russian culture, or it can be, a little drone can take out $1 million tank. And thanks to the audience here and those who gave money at UkrainianFreedomNews.com, I was just visiting one of the assembly points the other day. We're assembling little fleets of these drones, and they're going to be in the front very soon.
Our viewers can help in building a fleet, a small fleet of drones that can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. Joe Lindsley is reporting this war, is with us on TVP World. This is another Monday. We had a little break because of some circumstances and difficult things in Poland, but we are back again, back in business. So we would like to ask all of our viewers to subscribe to Telewizja Republika YouTube channel. It's a big channel, I know, but it's mostly a Polish channel. So we are having some difficulties with reaching out to all of our viewers around the world. So you can help us by spreading the news to the people who like our show and tell us where we can be found. You can find us also on rakracon.com. That's obvious. Joe, thanks a lot. See you next week and stay safe.
Dziękuję.
Dziękuję. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. We see each other tomorrow. And that's our website, www.rakracon.com. You can leave us your email over there. So we are in touch when we are reporting this war against our civilization. See you soon. Ciao.